What if I told you that the most powerful military machine on Earth wasn't defeated by a lack of weapons, soldiers, or technology, but by a single decision made by one man? In the summer of 1941, Adolf Hitler stood at the height of his power. Almost every major country in continental Europe had either surrendered or fallen under Nazi control. France had collapsed in just 6 weeks. Poland was conquered. Norway, Belgium, the Netherlands, Yugoslavia, and Greece had all fallen. Britain stood alone, surrounded and under constant bombing. To millions of people, it looked as if Hitler was unstoppable. His generals believed Germany had finally become the greatest empire Europe had seen since ancient Rome. But hidden behind the celebrations was a plan so risky that even some of Hitler's closest military commanders questioned it. A plan that would eventually destroy the Nazi Empire. It was called Operation Barbarossa. And many historians consider it the biggest mistake Hitler ever made. To understand why, we have to go back to 1940. After defeating France, Hitler expected Britain to negotiate peace. Instead, Britain refused to surrender. The Battle of Britain became Germany's first major failure. Unable to invade the British Isles, Hitler turned his attention eastward. For years, Nazi ideology had claimed that Germany needed more land, more resources, and more living space. Hitler believed Eastern Europe and the Soviet Union should become part of a vast German empire. He also viewed communism as his greatest ideological enemy. Despite signing a non-aggression pact with Soviet leader Joseph Stalin in 1939, Hitler never intended to honor it permanently. The agreement was only temporary. Behind closed doors, planning for the invasion had already begun. Hitler was confident. His intelligence reports claimed the Soviet Union was weak. The Red Army had suffered massive purges. Thousands of experienced officers had been removed. The Soviet military had performed poorly during the Winter War against Finland. Everything suggested that the Soviet Union would collapse within a few months. German generals predicted victory before winter. Many soldiers packed only summer uniforms. No one imagined the campaign would last much longer. On June 22, 1941, more than 3 million German soldiers crossed the Soviet border. It became the largest military invasion in human history. Thousands of tanks rolled forward. Aircraft filled the skies. Millions of rounds of ammunition were fired within the first hours. Entire Soviet divisions disappeared under the speed of the German advance. Cities fell one after another. Hundreds of thousands of Soviet soldiers were surrounded. The world watched in shock. Within weeks, Germany appeared unstoppable once again. Hitler believed history was unfolding exactly as he had predicted. But beneath the surface, problems were already beginning to appear. The Soviet Union was unlike any enemy Germany had faced. Its territory stretched across 11 time zones. Roads were poor. Distances were enormous. Every kilometer the German army advanced meant longer supply lines. Fuel had to travel farther. Food became harder to deliver. Replacement parts arrived late. Vehicles broke down. Thousands of horses were still being used to pull artillery and supplies. The modern German army depended on logistics, and logistics were beginning to fail. Then another problem emerged. Instead of focusing all forces on Moscow, Hitler repeatedly changed priorities. Sometimes he wanted Ukraine. Sometimes the oil fields in the south. Sometimes Leningrad in the north. His generals argued that capturing Moscow should remain the primary objective. It was the Soviet political and transportation center. If Moscow fell, many believed the Soviet government might collapse. Hitler disagreed. These disagreements delayed the advance. Every week that passed brought the German army closer to winter. Then came one of the harshest winters in decades. Temperatures dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. Engines froze. Machine guns jammed. Oil turned thick. Thousands of soldiers suffered frostbite. Many had no winter clothing because victory had been expected long before the cold arrived. German troops wrapped blankets around their boots. Some burned furniture just to survive the night. Meanwhile, Soviet factories had been moved east beyond the Ural Mountains. Instead of collapsing, production increased. New tanks rolled off assembly lines. Fresh soldiers arrived from Siberia. Intelligence reports informed Stalin that Japan would not attack from the east. This allowed him to transfer elite divisions directly to Moscow. In December 1941, the Soviet counterattack began. For the first time since the war started, Germany was forced into a large-scale retreat. The myth of German invincibility was broken. But Hitler refused to accept reality. Instead of allowing tactical withdrawals, he ordered soldiers to hold every position. Entire divisions became trapped. Experienced commanders who questioned his decisions were removed. Increasingly, Hitler ignored professional military advice and relied on his own instincts. The situation worsened the following year. In 1942, Germany launched another major offensive. This time the objective was the oil fields of the Caucasus. Without oil, modern armies cannot function. Hitler believed capturing Soviet energy supplies would guarantee victory. But once again, ambition exceeded capability. German forces advanced hundreds of kilometers into hostile territory. Supply lines became even longer. Resources became even thinner. Then came the city that would change the entire war. Stalingrad. From a military perspective, some historians argue that the city itself was less important than protecting the German flank along the Volga. But for Hitler, Stalingrad had become personal. It carried Stalin's name. Capturing it would symbolize total Nazi dominance. Street by street, building by building, brutal fighting consumed the city. Factories became battlefields. Basements became bunkers. Snipers hid among ruins. Sometimes opposing soldiers occupied different floors of the same building. Thousands died every day. German commanders requested permission to withdraw before encirclement became complete. Hitler refused. He promised that the Luftwaffe could supply the trapped army by air. The promise proved impossible. Weather conditions, Soviet defenses, and limited transport aircraft made adequate resupply impossible. Food ran out. Medical supplies disappeared. Ammunition became scarce. Winter returned. Soldiers starved. Many froze to death. Others continued fighting despite hopeless conditions. In February 1943, the German Sixth Army surrendered. Nearly 300,000 troops had entered the battle. Only a fraction would ever return home. The defeat shocked the world. Germany could still fight. But it could no longer win. From that moment onward, the initiative belonged to the Soviet Union. Massive offensives pushed German forces westward. Meanwhile, Allied bombers attacked German industry almost every day. Factories struggled to replace destroyed equipment. Cities suffered enormous damage. Fuel shortages became severe. Then Hitler made another catastrophic decision. In December 1941, shortly after Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, he declared war on the United States. He was not obligated to do so. Yet this decision brought the world's largest industrial economy fully into the European war. American factories produced astonishing numbers of tanks, trucks, aircraft, ships, ammunition, and supplies. The combined industrial strength of the United States, Britain, and the Soviet Union eventually overwhelmed Germany. By 1944, the Allies landed in Normandy. At the same time, Soviet armies advanced from the east. Germany now faced exactly the nightmare Hitler had hoped to avoid, a two-front war against enemies with greater manpower and greater industrial capacity. Inside Germany, resources disappeared. Fuel became scarce. Young teenagers and elderly men were drafted. Cities lay in ruins. Millions of civilians fled advancing armies. Yet Hitler still believed miraculous victories were possible. He ordered counterattacks that exhausted his remaining forces. He trusted secret weapons that arrived too late. He imagined divisions that existed only on paper. Reality and ideology had completely separated. Finally, in April 1945, Soviet forces entered Berlin. The city that had once celebrated Nazi triumph now echoed with artillery fire and collapsing buildings. Within underground bunkers, Hitler continued issuing impossible orders. Entire armies he expected to save Germany no longer existed. His empire had collapsed. On April 30, 1945, Hitler died inside the Führer bunker. Only days later, Germany surrendered. So what was the biggest mistake that destroyed Hitler's empire? Many historians point to Operation Barbarossa. By invading the Soviet Union before defeating Britain, Hitler created a massive two-front conflict that Germany lacked the resources to sustain. Others argue the real mistake was his refusal to listen to experienced generals. Some believe declaring war on the United States sealed Germany's fate. Still others say ideology itself blinded Hitler to military reality. The truth is that these decisions reinforced one another. Overconfidence led to invasion. Ideology overruled strategy. Pride replaced planning. Emotion replaced logistics. And personal ambition replaced military judgment. The empire that appeared unstoppable in 1941 collapsed only 4 years later. Its destruction offers one of history's clearest lessons. Even the strongest armies cannot overcome impossible logistics. Even brilliant tactics cannot replace sustainable strategy. And when leaders begin believing they cannot fail, they often create the very conditions that guarantee defeat. That is why the biggest mistake that destroyed Hitler's empire was not just one battle or one order. It was the belief that victory was inevitable, and that no advice, no warning, and no reality could prove otherwise.